I'm Courtney with Outlander Behind the Scenes. I became a fan of the show in 2014. I've been a fan of the book since 2006. And I started noticing all the strange synchronicities that were happening around Outlander. I started watching the show, and then I met Diana, and then just ever since I've been involved with the show, I've just had, it's like I'll meet people, I'll have experiences, doors will open, and I just think that's one of the cool things that surrounds Outlander. So that's part of why I started my blog. We are discussing episode 506 tonight, Better to Marry Than Burn.
Yes.
Sorry, okay. Also with me tonight is Antoinette.
Good night, all. Antoinette here. I love Outlander. This is the only fandom I've been in outside of tennis. And I have truly met some wonderful people. Chief among these are these three lovely ladies. I enjoy discussing and dissecting the episodes with them each week.
Okay, this is a teaching moment because this is done throughout our country. We dissect. We don't dissect.
What?
We bisect something, but we dissect. D-I-S-S-E-C-T.
And from the anatomist,
that's the first, when I introduced my course to the first year medical students, that was one of the very first things I ever said to them. I mean, don't say dissect, say dissect. I write the Outlander Anatomy blog, and I am a fiend for perfection. So in case you didn't notice, I think it is probably, in hearing some of the comments I've made in the past, some of the viewers might think that I'm not a fan. I actually am a very great fan of the books and of the show. That doesn't prevent me from pointing out things that I observe, though. So I hope the listeners will keep that in mind and for all of us, as we express our opinions and how things strike us, because we don't always agree. And that's one of the things that I love so much about our group, is because I learn something from all of you every time.
I am Catherine, and I am a book reader and a show watcher, and I love them both for many different reasons. And I have to say, like Antoinette, this is my absolute first fandom. I didn't even know what a fandom was. The only thing I had as reference was the Twilight movies, and I thought they were crazy, so I didn't even watch the movies all that much, but I just realized that there were fandom. Just like Courtney, this has opened up many, many doors. It has introduced me to many different new things, including these wonderful women who are now my sisters, and I love it.
This episode reminded me of episode 412, Providence, in that there was like heavyweights and, more lightweight part of the story. And I also was like, is Antoinette going to say it didn't move the story forward at all? Because I loved that episode. It was so artistic and it was so beautifully acted.
I did too.
But it didn't really move the story forward. So my overall impression is this was very similar to that episode. I really love certain elements in this episode. I liked this more than the last episode, for sure. But it didn't feel like one of the strongest ones of the season. I'll say that.
Some really good elements of the episode. I liked it more than the previous episode. My overall impression was it felt like a placeholder. It just felt like, as I said, it just felt like a placeholder. It felt like we were just in the episode marking time, looking at pretty things. And so.
Okay, I graded the last one, 505, as good to very good. And I would say that this was very good to good. I thought it was more very good than it was good. I still think that the first four were superior to these last two, but I think this one is on the upswing. I don't agree with Antoinette. I think it moved the story forward in a number of ways. And I thought the editing was good this time. And we didn't have to deal with going forward 200 years and coming back 200 years and all that like we did last time. So I thought the editing was better for me. So yeah, I would give it very good to good. I think there were some parts of it that were really very nice, and then other parts that were
yeah.
I like the way that you disagree with Antoinette, even though I said Antoinette would say that it didn't move the story forward.
That's right.
I'm your proxy.
I didn't say nothing.
I enjoyed it. There were a lot of good things about it. There were some things that didn't bother me so much partly because I skimmed the book so much that I didn't remember the details of the story anyway. So things that went away from the book didn't bother me. I wasn't anticipating anything, looking forward to a particular scene. So I just saw it for what it was, and it was, nothing turned me off, and something really turned me on. And it's hard to say because the first 4 episodes, the first 3 especially, were so well done, and we were waiting for so long for this to come out that really it's unfair to compare anything else to those first 3 because it wasn't just about the episodes, it was also about our anticipation of wanting them so badly.
Okay, favorite scenes. Antoinette, did you have any favorite scenes? And if so, what are they and why?
One of my favorite scenes was the opening scene with the carriage racing across the landscape. Beautifully shot. And then the performances by Maria, the husband, the daughter, the whole scene was just very, very well done. I was there wondering, what the hell is this? Because it just came out of the blue. So it had me on the edge of my seat. And what it turned out into was so powerfully done. My other favorite scene was the scene with Roger and Brianna when they were talking about what to do about the locusts, and he remembers something from history. I thought that was a very cleverly done of them for him to use something that he remembered from his time, but which happened in that time to change the future. I liked that interaction between Brie and Roger. I like the fact that they're forming their own unique little partnership, and I'm actually rooting for them now as a couple. Quelle surprise.
Wait. You said you like Roger? She said again,
as
please.
a couple, she said she was rooting
for
for
them
them as a couple.
I
said Roger and Brie. My last favorite scene was the one with Jocasta and Myrtle. Just because it was so well done, and just because Maria Doll Kennedy broke my heart in that scene.
Antoinette, virtual hug. The opening scene was also my favorite. I thought that was extremely well done. I remembered the story of this from the book, so I knew what was going to happen, but I thought that they did a wonderful job of showing that in a very short period of time, and I thought it did a service to Jocasta, because she comes across as being, very sort of cold often to viewers, I think, who don't know her from the books. And even there, she can come across as being very manipulative and cold. But this gives some backstory to her and some depth to her character, which I think did a good service to her character.
Yeah.
I actually like the little chit chat between the women about the Rawlings article in the paper. I thought that was in the broadsheet. I thought that was very clever, you know, how they're sitting there and she's written it and she hears it. The stable scene was my favorite. It was also my least favorite.
Thank you, Carmen. Yes.
What can I say? It had elements of both in it.
My favorite scene was very specifically the Jocasta and Murtaugh scene, but it was Jocasta telling the story of what we saw in the opening scene.
That's right.
Maria Doyle Kennedy, I mean, I kind of got this when she got cast, and I have been, every time she's come on screen, I just, you know, and she's had such small little parts. I loved that she was featured so much in this episode. I don't care if the story was moved forward or not. Actually, I really relished getting to see her story because it was done so well. And even the contrived Murtaugh piece, you know, her telling that story, it was just gut-wrenching. I bawled my eyes out. Well, and then her grief when he leaves, and I just thought it was amazing. Probably my second favorite is the opening scene, and same like you, Carmen. As soon as I saw the carriage, you know, and it said 1746, I was like, I bet this is going to be, and it really played out so similarly to how I imagined reading that in the book. And I think in subsequent readings of the Fiery Cross, when you learn of the losses that she's been through, and in the book she tells Brianna these things, but I think I liked that they told that story about Jocasta. I care about that character more than Graham Menzies. And then my next favorite is, I'm going to say the stable scene, but not the sex. We can talk about that later. The conversation afterward, and the scene of them after they had sex, I liked a lot, between Jamie and Claire. Those were my three favorites.
What sex?
So,
your imagination.
So, my favorite was the Jocasta and Murtaugh scene, both of them. Partly because I could not, even though I have sat across from Maria, I could not see her at all in that scene. I kept looking, thinking, that can't be the same person. I mean, I looked at her hands, I looked at her neck, I looked at her face, and I was like, they're just not the same person. Mm-hmm. She just did a phenomenal job, and I really like Duncan in that scene as well. I mean, that was probably his shiniest, like I wrote, I think on Twitter, that was his shiniest moment of many shining moments in Outlander. It was the first time they allowed him to be emotional without being angry. Usually they just show him being angry when he's emotional. So I loved that. The dialogue, the way it was shot, the lighting, everything about it. My next favorite scene was actually the scene under the tree with Jamie and Claire when he was asking her for her rings. That was a very, women are from Venus, men are from Mars moment. It was just like he just could not understand what her problem was. And she's looking at him like, what in the world? How could you not understand what my problem is? And I thought that was it was well acted. It was well written. It was just socially very significant. I just liked that scene. I thought it was done well. And my third would be when Jamie was interacting with Wiley, right before they were gambling. He was all Highlander. He owned the scene. He was in command. It was the Jamie from the books. I mean, it was just finally they just have the Jamie who's, who's intelligent, who knows how to manipulate people, but not in a smarmy kind of way.
Yes.
He just seemed like he just knew what he was doing, and he was in command. And that was partly why it played into the scene with Claire, because he was just like, why don't you trust me? When have I ever not done, when have I ever not done what was necessary to get things, to get us to where we needed to be? Mm-hmm. And I just like that.
Antoinette,
mm-hmm.
What worked for you in this episode?
One of the things that worked for me was the development and the time given to the Roger and Bree partnership. I really like that because I felt that has been lacking, because they've been wanting us to buy into them. And for me, that has been difficult, to buy into them as a couple, separate and apart, and not being compared to Jamie and Claire. So I really liked the time that was spent developing them, and their partnership. The whole arc of that little storyline with Jamie and Claire, starting with her counseling him when they were just standing by the rail, and he was saying that Murtaugh should be there, and she was, trying to say, listen, that was Murtaugh's choice, and you can't take everybody's burden on yourself. So starting from that to the stable scene, not the sex one. The one where he rescued her from Wiley, to the argument, and then to the, I really like that little arc that was played out in the episode between Jamie and Claire. To see those two partnerships in juxtaposition, I like that.
Something that worked for me, and it's a reiteration and a little bit of what has been said, and that was the Mercasta scene together. I thought that was very well done, as has been said. One of the things that I was delighted with is that I swear Murtaugh's eyebrows should get an Academy Award or an Emmy. That man, his eyebrows are like a separate character. He says so much with the movement of one or the other. It's pretty astonishing. And I thought it was an interesting story about the I Shine But Not Burn, the Lucio Non-Uro that Joe told about her father. And then I thought it was very interesting, the decision that she made. Now that scene, I think, is pivotal, because I do believe that is necessary for whatever Murtaugh's fate is going to be. And I think that released him from that relationship, or she released herself from that relationship. And I think that's going to move the story forward. So that's why I think that was a very important thing that we saw. I actually also thought that the dialogue between Jamie and Tryon in the tent, where he was getting fitted for his new red coat, was foreshadowing of what we're going to see with Jamie and the red coat. I think there's a tie-in there. And so I think that was very important. And while that was all going on, they were also explaining the Riot Act and why that was so important in North Carolina, and how that leads up to the battle that Tryon referred to. He told Jamie before he departed, go get your militia. And we're going to meet at Hillsborough. And I think that's going to take us into the next episode, or maybe the one after that. But I think we're heading up toward a showdown with the regulators. So I think those were both important in moving the story forward.
I actually loved the title card where they're powdering Wiley's wig. I thought that was really cool. I love seeing that. And the music that the opening scene of Jocasta, and that being 1746, I loved that as an opening scene. I love the music that Bear put with that. I think Duncan Ennis is really well cast. Alistair Finley is his name.
Really?
What?
Really? In it?
Yeah. I think Philip Wiley is really well cast. I just thought he really worked for me. And that is, yeah, but and that's a tricky role to play. That could have come off as, you know, his whole thing, I feel like could have not come off well because he has that weird makeup on and he's the smarmy guy, but he really did a good job. And did you guys notice? I felt like he looked like the Joker, sort of.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He looked like an STD on legs.
A what? She said an STD on legs. I love it.
Well, you know when people wear like really, he had that white powder on and it made his teeth look kind of yellow.
Yeah.
That's creepy.
He was creepy.
I thought what also worked for me surprisingly is the plague shot of the grasshoppers coming over. Again, that could have been cheesy, but it actually really worked.
What worked for me were the costumes. Lord John Grey. Oh my.
Gorgeous.
Jocasta's velvet dress. That deep burgundy velvet that was so rich you could barely see it. And it was like it was almost in shadow. It was so dark and rich.
Hold on, Kathy. You sound like you're getting a little orgasmic there. Just take a breath. Calm down.
Carmen's waving herself
I know, like
pretty much
for Lord John Grey.
Lord John Grey.
But he's not interested in those ladies. Did you see?
Yeah,
that's because he's waiting
know.
for me.
Oh,
exactly. Okay. I'll turn him. Well, anyway, the scenery, the way when they had the pergola with the flowers and everything, and then they had the scene where you could see over the lake into the, the main house, which was just absolutely beautiful. And of course, you know me, the walls. I love River Run. River Run has some of the best decor of any of the sets in Outlander. I mean, it rivals Paris. The colors of the paints that they use, the grain they use, wood grain in a lot of the scene. It's just, it was just wonderful.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite of the River Run rooms? Or
it's not even so much the favorite of the room. It was the color of, there's like this, it's actually a color very common in the Carolinas. It's called a haint blue. And what it is, it's a color that's actually supposed to ward away evil spirits. And there's an area of River Run that has that color. And it always stands out to me because it's so common here. But the way it's done there, it's a very much of a Carolina color. And I just think it's so interesting that they actually used it.
And how do you spell that word? Haint blue?
Haint blue. I think it's Haint. Actually, you see it often on the roofs of porches, on the ceiling of porches, because it's supposed to ward away evil spirits.
Very interesting.
In Jamaica, we would call that Duffy blue.
Okay.
Duffy?
Yes, that's what we call spirits, ghosts.
Yeah, which is interesting because what that means is that it was probably a commonality brought by slavery, by slaves.
Oh.
If it's both in the Caribbean and in the Americas.
Interesting. I learn something new every day.
Miss Antoinette. Least favorite scene.
Okay, my least favorite scene was the scene with Wiley and Claire in the stable. In terms of the second bit of it with Jamie coming in and I thought he just let Wiley off, a little bit too easily. That is not the Jamie that in the books. If he comes on somebody who has tried to assault Claire, he is not just gonna just let him go. My other least favorite scene was back to the stables and the alleged sex scene in the stables. Now, listen, I don't have to, they can do a sex scene fully clothed. I mean, look at the scene in The Devil's Mark where they were fully clothed is one of the hottest sex scenes they've ever done in this series. So
wait, which one's that?
The Devil's Mark.
When they're by the stream or by the stream. Fire.
By the fire. Before he takes her back,
night.
that one. Where he was using his fingers to good effect. And so a lot of people are looking forward to this.
I just think of, what's his name? Kilt Daddy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just so truncated, so it just left a lot to be desired. And then it was like they were throwing a bone to the book readers by having Jamie say the words, "Look down while I take you." Look down at what? What the hell was she looking at? Because he didn't even get his damn breeks off, as far as I could see. So, don't throw us a bone and think that, because he said those words, we're going to say, yay, we got the scene. My other least favorite scenes are anything with Tryon in it. Because I'm sick of this regulated storyline that just keeps dragging out and dragging out without any resolution. I'm sick to death of it.
Carmen.
Okay, I think my my least favorite scene was in the stable. And I think it was actually the sex part. I did like the part between Wiley and Claire. I thought it jumped a little bit, but I read the script and some of the things that had been written in were edited out or not filmed, which would have made it flow a little bit smoother, I think. It just looked like all of a sudden he's jumping her bones, and it was a little bit different than that in the script. I liked when Jamie came in, and I liked after the sex. One of the things that this script had in it was Jamie, when he pulled out his dirk, he says to Wiley, "One word and I'll saw off your boss sack." He's got his knife down by his balls, and he says he's gonna cut off his boss sack if he says anything else. So we missed that. It didn't get in there. I think it would have added a little bit of snap to the dialogue from the way it was. But I was disappointed too that the lighting was like broad daylight, and this was supposed to be nighttime, and it was too bright in there, and the floor was immaculate. It was it was as clean as it could be, and that it didn't feel like the sort of seductive type of setting in the dark that the book describes, and I was a bit disappointed in that. I was very disappointed. Well, I won't say very, but I was disappointed in the sex scene, because that is one of my favorite sex scenes between Jamie and Claire out of all the books. It just blows my mind every time I read it. And I was so looking forward to seeing it, and here she is completely dressed, and she just, in the book, she just has on a shift. So it the dialogue makes sense when he says, "Look down, and see me, see what I'm doing to you." It makes sense because it might be possible under those circumstances, but she had on petticoats and then a skirt and then her outer coat, and then he has on a waistcoat, a jacket, and his trousers. How did they get there so fast too? It was really swift. I know he's quite an accomplished lover, but still.
The Jamie and Claire sex scene in the barn was my least favorite also. And I like that in the book as well. And in the book, they're against a brick wall, I think, and it's dark, and it's, you know, it's not a big, huge place. I feel like they're in the back part a little bit more. I don't know, but also the dialogue. You're quite a woman, but you're still a woman. Like, that's not even something Jamie would say. Like,
Exactly.
I don't understand. I thought the whole thing was, and then Claire's like, I mean, just the whole thing was clunky. It didn't feel like Jamie and Claire. It didn't feel like they were buying the scene
Exactly.
when they were doing it.
They just
and then
it in. They were just phoning that in.
Exactly. And
it looked like they were trying not to laugh.
Yeah, Claire, Katrina. And then there's the actual sex part, you know, was that like 3 pumps? It just, yeah, and look down.
Like, how many licks does it take to get to the creamy center of a Tootsie
I know
Pop?
Claire's got a hair trigger, but still, you know, and look down. She didn't even look down.
Well, not that we saw.
Look down and see what I'm doing or whatever. And I think she was like, you know, but it was kind of just like, I'm supposed to say this line here. It has no consequence. Yeah, it was broad day. They showed them putting all the lights out at the party, and then somehow the stable
where the horses are
have electricity, or the lamps.
It was the electric presence of Jamie and Claire.
Yeah, I just that was a definite. As I said on Twitter, they squandered that scene, because I would have almost rather they skipped it than to do that with it, because I feel it was so not done justice to.
My least favorite was the exchange between Jamie and Claire before what was supposed to be sex. Mainly because I just felt like they haven't set up the Claire who responds physically to emotion enough throughout all of the episodes to make it seem realistic. The bottom line is that I hate this, I'm angry with you, so now I'm going to have sex with you type of situations. It just seems, it's so disingenuous. I just don't like it. And the exchange between the two of them, it was so amateurish that it just, it didn't even seem like them as characters, them as actors, them as anything. It just didn't seem right. It seemed like something out of a Disney movie rather than Outlander.
Felt like it was high school.
It was like a Disney, like High School Musical or something. It just didn't work.
Or like a high schooler wrote that scene, like a high school play.
Yeah. Listen, I agree. Especially since
like
all the other scenes.
Sorry, let me just get this out. No, I forgot what I was gonna say.
Good. Anyway. You know I love you, Anthony. So she's my sister. I can do that. My other least favorite actually was when Wiley came up out of the boat after Claire, and the whole interaction between her and Tryon's wife. It just seemed so contrived. He seemed like such a caricature. And all I kept looking at him just like, oh my gosh, you look like you're walking around with something that you're going to spread to somebody else. It was just so gross. I just didn't, I don't know. I didn't buy it. It just seemed like everyone would have been watching him just because he just didn't seem polished enough. I don't know. Maybe I just didn't, it didn't work. I didn't like it. And the other scene I didn't like was the beginning when Jocasta was getting her hair done, because Phaedra wasn't there.
Yeah, where's Phaedra?
I don't know. Who's Abigail and Margaret?
You know, I'm just like, where is Phaedra? That just means there's going to be a whole lot of stuff cut out if Phaedra's no longer there.
Maybe
some of my favorite parts
Maybe Phaedra had a different acting job for that episode.
That's what I'm hoping, and that she comes back.
What didn't work for me was the fact that the scenes were too truncated. Except for the Roger and Bree scenes, they were truncated, but we kept going back to them and going back to them. So that helped to flesh that out a little bit more. The other scenes were just too short, too truncated, and the dialogue felt very stiff. Very, I've never seen Sam and Kat phone in a performance like they did some of these scenes. They were just not into it, and you could see it. And I felt that that was a function of the fact that the scenes were not allowed to breathe. When I was watching it and thinking that to myself, I'm saying, you know what? Maybe I'm being too harsh. And I went back and I rewatched some of season 1. And what I realized is that in season 1, yes, they had different threads and different storylines, but they gave the scenes the time to breathe. Some of these scenes felt like people were just reading lines on a piece of paper, and then you just cut to something else. And then you came back and you cut to something else. So all of this back and forth, the cutting with the very short scenes, did not work for me at all.
So do you think that was a function of editing, directing?
I think it was a function of all three. I think the writing was very amateurish and clunky for a lot of the scenes. What is one of my things is that, fine, you're doing an adaptation and you're gonna have to choose which storylines you want to develop. Perfectly fine. But some of the dialogue in the books is so magical. Fine, take the cut, adapt and thing, but for heaven's sake, use some of the dialogue from the books and don't just throw them in as throwaways like what happened in that stable scene. Yeah. Let the characters breathe, let the words come out. Just give things a chance to develop, and don't just be jumping from one thing to the other, because then I don't buy it and I don't care.
That's the writing then.
Probably the writing. And so that certainly did not work for me. And also what continues to upset me and to bother me is that I love Duncan and I love Maria. And I think that they are exceptional, and that scene with them is one of the redeeming features of that episode. But my main problem is that, having decided to keep Myrta alive, I think they have painted themselves into this box and then had to develop this Mercaster relationship. It's wonderful, it's lovely, but at the end of the day, I don't really care. I do not care. The last thing I will say about this whole regulator foolishness is that we're into episode 6, and all we are hearing, disband the militia, gather up the militia, disband the militia, gather up the militia, come prepared for war. Oh, you can all go home. The hell? It's episode 6. Something should have happened by now. We only have 12 episodes. So, that's my thing now. We only have 12 episodes. Choose carefully the storylines that you're going to develop.
Yeah.
That is
the storyline.
Antoinette, we only have 12 episodes. Simmons. You missed that, audience. She just did a vulgar.
It was silent. It was silent. If you weren't things that didn't work, right?
Yeah.
Was that what it is?
Things that didn't work for you.
Okay, I want to go back to the stable scene.
Yes, there's a lot.
So when I agree, I don't remember who said it, but I think when Jamie says, you're an unusual woman, but you are a woman, and then she slaps him really hard. And then they do this sort of boxing match almost, where they run up and they kiss, and then they back off, and then they kiss again, and then they back off. It's like two battling creatures of somehow, and it just, they're past that. I could see where, you know, very early in their relationship, where that sort of fighting for power was part of what they went through in order to try to make their relationship grow and mature. But they're past that now, and it just didn't seem. Yes, I think she was upset about the rings, but I find it hard to believe that that was sufficient to explain this odd business that I said was like high school writing. I noticed something interesting, and that was that when Jocasta was, I'm going to go switch a little bit because I just wanted to pick up that one thread. When Jocasta is telling her story to Murtaugh about her daughter and what happened, she said 30 years ago. That would make it 1776, and it's 1771. So I don't know if that was a writing error or if Joe can't add, but something does not compute right now. I told you that I'm a sticker for that sort of thing. Where's Phaedra?
Mm-hmm.
Our beautiful, lovely Phaedra. Where'd she go?
Yeah.
And why were Marcelly and Fergus just reduced this wooden statue standing in a corner not saying nothing? They just had them there as like placemats, like
they couldn't do everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still.
At least Fergus had company.
Well, that's true.
What didn't work for me? I mentioned already, you know, the dialogue in that sex scene. And as you say, Carmen, it just felt, it didn't feel authentic at all. It felt like, you know, in the book, Jamie's jealous because she put herself in that position and had this guy all over her to the point that his little mole thing is on her neck. And I mean, this one, he kind of picks it off like, what's this? You know, and he knows what it is, but you don't get any of that, you know, you don't get any of that. And then she's like, well, I was trying to do a business deal because I bought it. And then, yeah, it just, that whole thing didn't work. I think, you know, I was looking back, I think the director's a pretty big part of whether things work or not. I mean, writing is obviously huge, but when there are two episodes directed by the same person who aren't, and those episodes aren't that great, it makes me think, I looked back in 306 and 307. Do you guys remember those? 306 was the reunion.
Malcolm, yeah.
And then 307 was
Creme de Menthe.
Creme de Menthe, yeah. Antoinette's all-time favorite.
Yes.
They were directed by the same person. Now, the writing in 306, Matt wrote that, and it was great. But I remember thinking when I was watching it, like, I don't think Katrina likes this director. I felt like that she didn't get the most out of her for that episode. And then 307, anyway, so I have that kind of same feeling. Mira Menon did 505 and 506, and I have a feeling that that's a weak link.
You know, she got the Nora Ephron Prize from Tribeca for directing, but I think that's for comedic directing, and I don't know how much experience that she might have with dramatic directing. Just a thought, but
I think they make a big effort to hire more women. But I'm with Diana on that. Hire the best person for the job.
Well, even Matt said you'd be surprised in the writing room who comes up with the most romantic scenes.
Yeah.
Because he said you'd think it'd be the women, but he said it's actually the men. He was like, men are far more. He said women will point out the romance, but it's the men who are more romantic. And I thought that was very interesting.
Well, Anna Forrester did the wedding episode. I think she did a beautiful job of that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And she's a woman. So my point is, don't hire
he was
women.
just saying in the room.
Yeah, in the writer's room.
But he said it after this episode.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
I saw that. My point is, hire, I don't care if they're a man or a woman, hire the person who can do the job.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
Well, what? I mean,
intellectually, I agree with that, Courtney, in terms of hire the best. But in this day and age, and practically, when there are so few women in directors' chairs, you know, how are they going to get experience? How are they going to develop their craft if they never get to sit in that director's chair? Do you know what I mean? So I don't agree with that. I think you have to give people a chance, and and you know, they have some things just have to be learned on the job.
I agree, and I think that
director school and then come out and be a Martin Scorsese.
I agree. I just think that Game of Thrones is a good learning ground, not Outlander.
I have to agree with that. I think using Outlander as a teaching tool for directors and writers probably isn't a very good idea. Not with this fan base.
It's not a good idea for me because we only have 12 episodes, Antoinette. And then the other one was, I wrote down, where's Phaedra? Yeah. Natalie Simpson is her name, right? Or Simmons?
Yeah.
Simpson.
Simpson.
I really am going to be bummed if she's not back. Like, my biggest regret of who hasn't come back has so far been Laura Donnelly. And then Natalie Simpson will be right there with her if she doesn't come back. I hope we see her later.
So what didn't work for me? I felt that they whitewashed slavery a little bit too much in this episode. They made slaves seem like just regular servants, which was absolutely not the case.
And can I just say, after Claire was so in 402, she seemed to be fine with it.
Very comfortable, exactly. Yeah. I noticed that when she walked out onto the porch.
Yeah, it's just like
yeah. So I, you know, of course, and then Phaedra not being there, you know, she was, I just loved her in all of the episodes she was in. But mostly I just felt like that scene before, the stable sex scene or whatever it was, it just seemed like a cross between Meerkat Manor and High School Musical. But it did. I mean, it was like these two little meerkats. Then it's like,
that's a good
I expected them to break out in song or something. You know, it just was really amateur.
You know, I'm laughing, but it breaks my heart.
I know,
it really does, because I love that part of the book.
Yeah, it really was. And one thing I felt didn't work for me. They used Bonnet too little. I really am starting to really enjoy him on screen. I love Ed. I don't know how much of that is because I actually took the time to watch him in an interview. I watched him interact with people, and it just completely changed my attitude towards him as an actor. Even though I liked him in Downton Abbey, but his there's the swagger he has naturally that is now in Bonnet that was not there before.
I think the swagger was there. The gravitas was not there.
Only time I saw the swagger a little bit was when they dropped him off after they saved him from being, you know, when they got him out of Charleston. But from that point on, I didn't see it much. And even when he was trying to intimidate Roger in earlier scenes, he didn't come off as menacing as he does now. Now it's like something about him being polished makes him far more menacing. The other thing that didn't work for me was that they made Roger, although I liked the way that Rick acted his scenes, he was phenomenal, but the thinker was always Bree. And they took that away and gave it to Roger.
Yeah.
She was the engineer. She was the one who always came up with solutions for things. She was the one who figured things out in every single situation. And if I remember correctly, it was her who kind of saved the day in almost everything. She came up, she was like, you know, Minnie MacGyver or whatever, you know, Ridge MacGyver or whatever you want to call her.
I think in the book, Claire started the Claire fired one of the Fields in the book.
But I think she means you're
Yeah,
talking
in
about in
general.
general.
No, that
Yeah.
occurred to me too. It's
Yeah.
the same thing. They're giving Richard or Roger Fergus's stuff, and they're giving Roger Brianna's stuff.
Yeah,
But-
I just felt
but,
like she
you
was
know,
just like this
There.
adoring wife who was just, oh, I'm so proud of you. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, look at you. I'm so adoring. When she was a thinker. And I just didn't like, I mean, especially, and it was so, one thing I also find very frustrating is Roger pontificates too much. It's like, just get to the point, dude. I mean, no one cares about all your, it's like, this is why I'm doing this. This is what I'm doing. And this is why.
Well, he's a professor.
I understand that, but when you're in the middle of a crisis, you know, nobody cares. You know, just do it. And it's like this having to explain everything along the way. I find it very annoying, especially since it was Bree who came up with ideas anyway.
But
She did come up.
I'm sorry. To that point, Kathy. Yes. But I think what they're going for is this whole partnership thing, because
I understand.
Came up with the idea to smoke them, but then he was wondering about the wind and how they would judge where the wind was, and she said, "I think I have a solution for that." Do you see
Yeah.
what so
I mean, I understand what they did, and I think it was done very well, and I think it was acted very well. I think it was written very well. I think the whole thing played out very well. I just don't like the fact that they have dumbed down Bree.
Do you know, one of the things about that I didn't care for was when he was making the smudge pots, you know, he's mixing the manure with the goose grease. I don't think Mrs. Bug would go for that, but that's what he used instead of oil. And, you know, he's mixing and then he hands it over to her and walks off and she starts mixing. I mean, you know, what was that about?
Yeah.
Did you guys see
I saw that.
I
Yeah.
You know, it was
that,
like,
yeah.
here, wife, take over. I'm done mixing. Now it's your turn.
But then right after that, is that a different scene when she says, "You keep shoveling your shit," and all?
Yeah. No, it was in that same scene. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit perky. So that worked.
I
for
love
me.
that shoveling your shit line because it took me back to 304. Yeah, 304.
Oh, when Jamie was shoveling shit.
And you know, with Geneva, I'm shoveling shit, my lady.
Yes. Yes. Things that you noticed, Miss Antoinette.
The locusts seemed a little bit CGI to me. I know it's CGI, but usually I don't notice if something is CGI, but I noticed that just looked a bit fake.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I noticed is Inez Duncan. You said you thought he was perfectly cast. I'm looking at this dandified person, and I'm saying, Duncan, is that you, the fisherman, Duncan? How did you get to be such a dandy? You know, and he was the one. I love that little twist that they did, though, because in the book, Duncan was afraid that Jocasta would want him to, you know, to consummate the marriage. And in that little scene, he was the one who was saying, look, you know my name Inez. You know what that means. Inez. I love that.
I love the look on her face when he said, "To soothe your nerves, perhaps," and she's like, "You are my fifth husband."
And the other thing I noticed is why did they just bring back Lord John to dance and say one line? Do you know what I mean? I mean, really? What did he say? Something about, and this is why the riot act was passed. And it is, they could have taken out the judge, who is he, and given those lines to Lord John. You know, some of these choices are just so baffling to me. I don't understand the thought process behind some of the stuff that they do.
I think they need to hire you. You're a woman.
And like Kathy, you know, all the slaves look like they were just part of a catering crew.
Yeah.
You know?
And unrealistically so.
Everybody was in their livery. Yes, they would have been dressed up, but they were just mingling it. I mean, bullshit.
And it wasn't historically accurate either, but that's okay. I mean, that you just wouldn't have had. I mean, the bottom line is one of their divide and conquer tactics was to use lighter skinned
They would have had
slaves
all those
in the
dark
house,
the dark skin
so
slaves
and
in the house.
the slaves that were doing that work were just far too dark for that time. And that was a divide and conquer tactic that was used to keep us, divided, so that we wouldn't come together. And unfortunately, it's still present today. The colorism.
But that's one of the
present.
things that I'm noticing in some of these episodes that don't work, is that there is not that attention to detail and making sure to get the little things right that we have become accustomed to.
But who would have done that, though? Who would have been there to point that out?
Well, that's the writer's job. If you remember Barbara Stepansky, she researched the crap out of her episode, both back in the books and what's around. And it was so full. I mean, it's kind of akin to, someone does a paper and it's like a really great, and somebody just turns in a paper that's like,
Well, I noticed that, Kathy, and that bothered me. And it not just in this episode, but in other things, just little things that they're just making slip, that it just feels so lazy. And, it's season 5,
But who else would care, really?
We care.
We're not the ones who make the most noise when things aren't accurate.
That's the truth. Because the ones that make the most noise are just over the moon about everything.
And they probably wouldn't even have noticed.
And I'm sorry. I just have standards. And those standards have been curated by the excellence that we have seen that can be produced. One of the things I boast about people to Outlander when I try to convince them to watch it is the production values and how, whether or not you're into this kind of story, it is just very good TV. It is just good TV. You don't have to dive into the books. It's just good TV, and it holds up against a lot of the other content that is available on TV, And so when these kind of things happen, it just detracts from the episodes just being standalone good TV.
I had some things I noticed. One of the things I noticed is when Jocasta was signing the document to transfer the ownership to Jemmy of River Run, and Ulysses hands her the quill. If you notice, she moves her hand on the paper until she feels the seal down in the lower left, and that tells her where to sign her name. Because he didn't touch her hand. Nobody touched her hand to tell her where to put that quill. So she had to have a way of doing that. And I noticed that she touched the seal to get that orientation, which I thought was very good. Did you notice Jamie's calluses on his palm of his hand when he accepted the rings from Claire?
I did.
Well, they were real. Those were not those pull-ups. Yes, that's from his exercise, but they fit with the character. It was an anatomical observation I made, and I thought, well, that's just great, because that's exactly how it's very likely that Jamie's hands would have been. And then I got a question on Twitter yesterday asking me if it was possible to have sex like that against a wall. And I said, yeah, actually it is.
If you have to ask the question?
Yeah, but she said anatomically, how does that work? Well, you have to get the woman's hips up off the ground and tilt them.
And he has to be long enough.
And you have to have your clothes out of the way. But it is anatomically possible. So those were things that I noticed and that I wanted to comment on. And then the boss sack, I wish that had been in there, actually. And by the way, in the script, it also, when they were fighting, Claire said, "Oh, are you going to spank me again?"
That would have worked.
I heard it. Actually, I thought that was what was going to be said, because based on what he was saying and based on what had happened in the first season.
They took it out. That's why I mentioned it, is because it was in there, and it would have made a little bit more sense about the, this animosity that was building. They used what that was going on between them, and it would have helped, I think, explain.
It would have sold it a bit more.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it would have tied the comment about being a woman.
yes.
She would have said, "Oh, well, that's what you
Well,
said
that's
to me
because,
back
yeah, that's
then,
what you said when.
because I was your wife, and so it was your job to spank me."
Exactly.
Yes.
I
That
still
was-
don't think he would have said that. I think he would have,
Mm-mm.
you know, in the book, he was like, "I'm a jealous man, and you did this, and I'm gonna freaking take it out on you."
Yeah.
It wasn't like, "You're a woman. Give me," you know. Yeah.
I thought that the images of the locust actually eating the barley, you could see them, you know, when they lit, you could actually see their mouth parts moving, their mandibles moving. And I thought that was really cool. And even though, you know, it's obvious that the cloud of them was CGI, that is what it looks like. I've seen the films of them in Africa when they come in on those poor people's crops, and they come in a cloud that darkens the sun. So that was, you know, even though it was obviously a CGI, that was true to how these things do that, how these insects come in groups like that.
Weren't they grasshoppers, not locusts?
Well, I think she says they're locusts in
They're locusts.
snow and ashes.
Yeah. Grasshoppers don't swarm like that, but locusts do.
Yeah.
But
So
they
do
didn't look like
so do
locusts. I grew up with locusts. They didn't look like
Oh,
that.
well, the locusts then like also, you know, they genetically, they change, they mutate over time. So what we see now aren't the same. But I mean, in Africa, I mean, in Kenya, we had locusts, and they were just like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The only difference is that people ate them. And so
crickets also will do that, although they're the ones that went into Utah in the 1800s were actually katydids. They were called crickets.
Yeah. Crickets tend to be more green, and locusts tend to be more brown.
Well, it depends on the cricket.
Depending on the cricket, yeah. But I mean, locusts, we call the locusts, they were brown, and they were a little bit larger, and they were high in protein, so people often ate them. Yeah, they're very high.
They fry up.
They fry very nicely. Good. Yeah.
Well,
I've only tried it once.
Who was it that went out into the in the Bible, and it lived on honey and locusts? It was help me.
As we talk about the locusts,
Job.
Did anybody notice? Sorry, talking about the locusts. Did anybody notice in the scene where they were setting their fires and doing that? And Roger says, "Don't let your fires go out." And then the next thing you see is everybody letting the fires go out. And
they were in shock.
Don't stop. Yeah. And then they're all like, "Here they come. Stop waving." And go like this.
Yeah,
but
like, I mean,
wave your face. They're coming.
If you've never seen anything
Marsley's
like that before,
the only one who kept going.
But if you've never seen anything like that before, it can be a bit shocking.
Oh yeah. I was overtaken by a swarm of bees one time, and I heard it, and then I was like, oh my God, it's like a big cloud, and that wasn't the whole sky. I noticed that Philip Wiley stole the Beardsley's horse.
Oh, it sure looked like he was in their barn hiding.
Oh, that was a beautiful horse, though.
No,
yes, it was, and the ones pulling the carriage were also the same Frisians. Back in 1746, they had the same horses. And also in that stable was the dragoon's horse who pulled over Jocasta in 1746.
30 years before.
Yeah. I mean, he's got some longevity. But, you can't have endless horses. So,
so funny.
And then did you guys notice Jocasta, even though can't see, like Duncan Innes, and yes, he was very dressed up, but I felt like he was old, and I don't know. It wasn't his dress. They would have dressed him. I felt like it was the rest of it. He was missing an arm. I don't know. She says this, like Ulysses comes in. And by the way, do we think Ulysses is in love with her?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I think there are feelings there.
I
Well,
think he cares deeply about her, but I don't think I haven't seen the kind of love.
No, maybe not romantic love, but he does.
I don't see romantic
I don't think
love.
they can have Jocasta doing the Ulysses and Murtaugh and then marrying. I mean, that's not very realistic, right?
He'd be a hoe.
He'd be a major host. There were three Camerons, and then Ennis. That's the fourth. Yeah. I think that the way they're playing it in the show, Ulysses may be in love with her. That's my take. But anyway,
but it's unrequited. She doesn't feel the same way about him.
Yes.
Well, he wouldn't dare express it in any way except concern for her well-being, which is what he did. I mean, he wouldn't dare do that.
Yeah.
Would he? He wouldn't.
In the books,
No, he wouldn't.
In the books?
Well,
no.
I'm just saying in the show. I agree in the books, but I don't see them going that direction.
No, they can't. They can't.
They can't.
Yeah.
They can't.
No, that's just too
Ulysses
much.
in there with Murtaugh is already occupying that space.
That is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
I think that is a storyline that I would have been, because I think Colin and Maria would have knocked that shit out in the park.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is a missed opportunity. I agree.
We would have heard all about it. It would have created World War III amongst the Outlander fandom.
Well,
too bad. They read the books. I mean,
I know it's too. No, not everybody does, but too bad. But I'm just saying.
You think it would be amongst people who are book readers?
Not amongst people who are book readers.
Yeah,
however,
the non-book
even
readers.
amongst people that were book readers, I've heard discussions about how that was unrealistic.
How that was what?
Unrealistic.
How it was unrealistic. Unrealistic in the books. There's not people's favorite item in the book. People who are book readers.
What I noticed is that Jocasta says, Duncan Ennis is barely out the door, and she says, "Do you really think I can feel the look you're giving that poor man?"
Mm-hmm.
When he's barely out the door, and I'm like, well, he's barely out the door, and you're saying that to him. Maybe she's blind and he's deaf. I don't know. Did you guys see the look that the camera rested on Ulysses when Jamie says River Run has a new master?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I want to see blooper scenes of the crew person who's throwing the grasshoppers at the window.
Oh, that's funny.
When they're sitting there and they're going, tink, tink. The pergola is gorgeous that Gary's team built for the wedding.
Gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Oh, I find the casting of Mrs. Tryon strange. Yeah, she's like the same height as Katrina, and she's taller.
She looks too much like her.
Yeah, she's taller than Governor Tryon, and I don't think that she would be correcting him at the party like that. I mean, maybe I think they were trying to show so that she's kind of modern and some kinship with Claire, but I thought that part was a little far-fetched.
Mm-hmm.
Myself.
Not the Tryon that from the books. No, he wouldn't have. No, that would not have sit right with him. No.
Right.
Although I love Tim Downey. I just love him.
Did you see his calves, by the way? They're pretty muscular.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, he's got some good calves on him.
Yeah, he does. I was impressed. He was in his silk stockings.
I bet Sam would love to have calves like that.
You what? What did you say?
She says, Sam would love calves like that.
Love the calves. I bet Sam would love to have calves like that.
He got chicken legs.
He can't do anything about it. It's his genetics.
I know, it's genetics. I know.
Carmen can explain.
You know what he should
Well,
get?
I can. He has a very long Achilles tendon, and he has a short muscle belly on his gastrocnemius, and for that reason, it occupies a small amount of his calf compared to the length of his tibia. So
There you go.
he gets a chicken leg that way. And I've had
Yep.
a woman write me on Facebook saying that her husband has Viking genes and has calves exactly the same way, which I thought was interesting.
What I noticed was,
Yes. Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
what I noticed was after having that beautiful quartet actually playing instruments in Roger and Bree's wedding, they ruined it by having people pretending to play instruments at this wedding.
Really?
Or this, yes,
They were pretending. Oh,
Yes, they were pretending.
I
The
didn't
music
notice.
didn't match the bowing. The music didn't match the fingering. The fingering was, I don't even think they were real musicians based on the way the person was holding the violin and the way they're fingering. I'd be very surprised if they were. The cello player, I was just so disappointed. Now, the other thing I noticed was I really, 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 really loved the fabrics in this. I just noticed the fabrics in every single costume. The silks, the velvets were just gorgeous. You know, they're orgasmic as
Yes.
as
As
Antoinette would say.
Antoinette called you on.
I know. No, but it was just you could almost smell them. You know, like velvet gives off this warm smell. It was like you could almost smell the velvet. The other thing I noticed was it was interesting, and I can't remember if it was from the books, but the exchange between Bonnet and
Forbes.
Yeah, Forbes, little ratty dude. Him knowing that he was potentially the father of Bree's child.
Yeah. How does he know
I
that?
didn't understand that either.
Yeah. How did he know that?
We don't,
You know.
not, there's
And-
various ways. I thought about various ways that he could have found out.
Mhm.
I mean, Bonnet himself might have told him.
That's
Yeah.
Because they're,
Well, he did say, "I'm a father now."
he did
Mhm.
on the way out of that, when after he
So,
sliced the
I
guys.
guess they're not just business partners. They must be boon companions, friends. Because the
Mhm.
only way he would have known that Forbes is if Bonnet told him.
I felt like the whole Wiley, Bonnet, Claire thing was sort of strange. It just seemed very tawdry to me. I just seemed like she wouldn't have gone through all of that without consulting Jamie first.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I just it didn't play right for me. I did notice,
agree.
but I thought it was acted well.
Yeah.
However, it just didn't play right. What I noticed is that, you know, the acting was wonderful. The sets were wonderful. The costumes were wonderful. The dialogue was hit or miss. And the storylines were mostly good, but, you know, there were a lot of misses in there too.
I think there were missed opportunities.
Yeah, I agree.
It's almost more to me that there were mistakes of omission than mistakes of commission.
Exactly.
Not entirely, but
Mhm.
along those lines, I guess.
Well, I was going to say a couple other things I noticed. Claire's face was great when they mentioned Rawlings.
Yeah.
Her surprise, I thought was really good. And great faces by 18th century women who were, when she says, maybe they can't afford to, you know, feed them. And they're kind of like,
Have that many.
What? You know what
Whatever.
would have been better if they had taken what they did, the sex scene between Jamie and Claire, and had it between Jocasta and Myrta. That would have made more sense. Their exchange to him, them just kind of
what?
leaving and abandoned, and yeah. And then it was like one last time.
What? Jacosta's like 70. He's gonna smack her.
She told him that she wasn't going to accept him.
Yeah.
He asked her to accept him, and she said no. That's the only thing that could be done, because we know he's not going to last through the end of this season. So
I was like,
I think it would have been more enjoyable.
No more.
What they showed.
No.
No, I like that. I love the warmth and love between them.
I do too. I like Mercosta. Eclipse, the famous racehorse.
Did you look it up?
Frisians do not They're not racehorses.
Racehorses, no.
Thoroughbreds are racehorses.
Okay.
So
well,
that
in
was
that day, is that it? Would that be the right term in that day, though? That's 250 years ago. So what
There
would
was
it be
Arabian
then?
races. There were Arabian racehorses back
Oh
then.
yeah, yeah, but I don't
Yeah.
know what they were called. Were they called thoroughbreds then?
I don't know.
Courtney.
I don't
But
know.
it wouldn't have been a racehorse. That wouldn't have been a racehorse either way.
Yeah, Frisians.
No, well, well, he said.
I doubt they're
though,
that fast.
He says though he didn't say it, I don't think, in the episode, but in the script he says he's Arabian. He's supposed to be an Arabian, and he's not. He's a Frisian, but
no, he's supposed to be a Frisian in the book. He's a Frisian.
But he says he's from the Arabian line.
No, in the script.
Script, and the script is what it says, and so that makes more sense along the line of racing.
Mm-hmm. So
me.
They not only need medical consultants, they also need horse consultants.
Wiley was tougher in the book, I thought. He was like a good swordsman and stuff. Mm-hmm. This Wiley wasn't
quite such a fop.
Yeah. I mean, he was a dandy, but he wasn't a complete sort of.
No, because later in the book, he actually has some parts that are more manly, if you remember.
Yeah, which I suppose could happen, but
on his property, later on his property. I don't want to give anything away, but.
Did you guys notice the tree that they're standing under?
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought of John Gary Steele when I saw
the
that.
oak with moss.
Oh my
so
gosh,
beautiful. I noticed Jamie's calluses. So you think those are from his CrossFit?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean
not his makeup.
That's from him doing pull-ups and from him. Holding, gripping, rowing
that
and
bicycle
gripping.
Thing that he does.
Yeah.
Anything that
CrossFitters have that. It's
his exercise, whatever he does.
It's his exercising.
Yeah, it's just his exercising and him gripping.
Did you guys notice that Brianna had erect nipples?
Yes, I did. When they were coming in the field, after the locusts had passed over.
Yeah,
yes.
I was like,
that. I was like, I guess bras aren't a thing. I was like, bras must not be a thing then.
Well, maybe it was cold.
When they weren't a thing, but at least they bound. I would imagine they.
I mean, I would think that would be a no. Mrs. Bug would be like, Brianna, your nipples are showing or something.
Well, they do. She does bind herself in the book, because I remember her taking it off at one point, and Claire does too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they just forgot that.
Yeah.
It was for
chilly outside.
Maybe it was her 60s self coming through there.
Throwing her bra away.
No corsetry.
I like when Bree kills the grasshopper. Or locust, whatever it was.
With the shovel.
Yeah. And then the last one was I thought the cutest that Murtaugh looked in the whole thing is when he winked at Ulysses. Did you guys notice that?
No,
I didn't notice it. I just noticed his wig. His hair looks fantastic. He has a good wig.
His wig is really good. I don't think Roger's wig is very good. It actually looks like a wig.
Yeah, the wig, kind of the.
Yeah, I don't know.
Some scenes it does look like a wig.
Yeah, I wish they'd do something about that.
Let's do medical anatomical. Catherine, would you like to go first this time?
Jocasta was did perfectly well as a blind person. It was very convincing.
Let's dissect this.
No. I failed.
All right, Carmen, it's all you.
All right. So the callus is number 1. Number 2 was making love against a wall. Is it possible? And yes, it is. In fact,
that's medical? Hey.
Well, no, I said or anatomical.
I'm just joking.
So, well, it could be medical. It depends.
Yeah.
There's a famous drawing by Leonardo da Vinci where he imagined sex in a man and woman, where it's a midline drawing of the organs interacting with each other. It's amazing. It really, really is. But the point of it is that it depends on the tilt of the pelvis of the female. And her, you know, he had looked like he was holding her bottom up. So that tilts the pelvis so that it does make it possible. If she was standing in an upright position, that would be pretty hard to do, but I don't think she was. She has her legs up off the ground and they're around his back. And I think that if I'm not being too graphic, you can cut me out on it when you edit if you want to.
They actually have an MRI of that as well.
I'll bet that's, because they've done a lot of studies on it actually. But I also wanted to say that I thought that in the very beginning scene where Hector accidentally shoots Morna, that blood splashing on the officer was the red coat was very effective because he shot her in the head and it would burst, I think, the skull. Those balls were gigantic. They were like, I don't know, 12 centimeters across, not 12 centimeters, I mean millimeters. They were just really large, and they didn't just explode like our shells do now. They plowed their way through the tissue. And so I think that he probably blew the top off of her skull or the side off of her skull and then splattered the officer. And there was probably other gray matter in there as well. But I thought that was effectively done. I thought the look on his face was everybody's face was of shock and horror was really effectively done. I thought that Jocasta demonstrated shock very well as the carriage was pulling away, and she began to sob. If you've ever cried like that, you can't get your breath. And and you're just gasping. And I thought she portrayed that extremely well. And then later also, as she was reliving it, and the last thing, when she took the ribbon off of Morna's hair, and that was all she had left. And then her other two daughters and their families went with the fires, as she said, and she said she figures that her eyesight being lost was her punishment for having left Morna on the road, and there's not much she could do about it, though, honestly. I don't look at life that way, but she did, and I appreciate the way she felt. But that's about all the medical that I can think of in that particular episode.
Yeah.
Unless you want to talk about nipples. You could talk about
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Really?
Sure.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the nipple is unusual because I used to teach the histology of it, because it has a lot of smooth muscle in it. And when that smooth muscle is stimulated, it causes the nipple to be erect. And so it becomes erect in cold or in stimulation and things like that, but it becomes erect so that a child can get a hold of it. If it's soft, you cannot nurse a child when it's soft because it can't grip it. So that's the function of that, even though, a lot of movies would have us think it's just for men's pleasure, like Bonnet said in the last episode, but it isn't. There's a biologic
it's functional
function to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, primary function.
Yeah. Survival, actually.
When I nursed my kids, and after that I was like, don't call these boobs, they're breasts.
Yeah, I don't call them.
They've
I
earned
never use that term.
Yeah.
I nursed all four of mine onto the cups, so.
Yep.
Yeah, I did too.
Same too. Yeah.
Antoinette, do you want to talk about the riot act, or
I could have figured out what the hell they were talking about.
I tried to follow. I'm not a lawyer, but I could not follow it.
So has he withdrawn the pardons and has put the riot act in place now, so that, and then the line about they refuse the mercy, what does that mean?
Well, it means that the pardon that he gave to Knox for all of there was a pardon that, remember, Jamie was supposed to deliver them to everybody. and not a single regulator accepted the pardon. So what Tryon is saying is that now we have the Riot Act and it's retroactive. I can go back and arrest anybody that I want to. I can hang them if I want to. You know, I can do whatever I want to with them.
If they gathered more than 10 people.
10 people, yeah.
Did anyone else see the parallel between that and what's happening now?
I did, actually. I thought about that.
I'm glad you were paying attention and followed that, Carmen, because I couldn't follow what the hell they were talking about and how the pardons fit into it, because I thought that the pardons had already been distributed. They didn't have to accept them from what I was understanding. All Jamie had to do was deliver them. So there was that gap there between what had happened in the previous episode and what they were talking about.
But the thing is, what he was trying to do was to, again, divide and conquer. He was giving everyone a pardon except for Murtaugh so that they would turn him in, and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was his retaliation for that.
Yeah, so he didn't get anybody to accept none of them accepted the pardon, and now.
And it's an ego thing, because if no one accepted the pardon, then he's not the merciful, you know, then he's like, well, screw you guys. I'm going to do the Riot Act.
That's.
I mean, as I said, I wasn't paying too much attention, but, you know, American law is based on English common law. And under English common law, you can't criminalize something in retrospect. If something wasn't criminal at the time you committed it, you can't pass a law to make something that was not criminal at the time you did it now criminal.
Well, that's the whole point
it
of
was
corruption.
written by Samuel Johnson. It really was a real act. I mean, you can probably look it up.
John,
you would be able to understand it better than me.
But isn't that the regulators' point? They're corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole.
Yeah,
I mean,
Tryon's corrupt.
Was a real rat.
He was corrupt. So isn't it Samuel Johnston?
Johnston, pardon me. You're right. Yes.
And the reason I know that is because that my son's one of his best friends is named Samuel Johnston, and he looks just like John Bell.
Oh my goodness!
The synchronicity thing that I talked about.
Speaking of which, I really miss Ian and John Bell. I miss them.
I do too. I like him.
Favorite lines? Carmen.
Okay, my favorite line is, "That woman is a vile succubus."
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I laughed out loud when I heard Wiley say that. I also liked it when Wiley said, "Which one is he, pray tell, silver or gold?" And then he asks her, you know, about the first husband, how long ago that was, and she said a lifetime.
Favorite line is only one: keep shoveling your shit.
I thought it was good when he said, "You've shown me your pride and joy. Now I want to show you mine." I was like, wow.
Show me yours and I'll show you mine.
What's going to happen now?
Yep.
Roger, you know, when your father left me in charge, I thought I might have to mend a fence, wrangle an odd cow, but I get a biblical play.
That was good.
Roger is such a whiny little baby.
I liked Murtaugh's line. I told you once I wanted a woman who could hear in a man's voice, that he meant all the right things, even if he hasn't the right words to say.
Yeah.
I thought that was
a nice line.
I thought that was a nice line, and I just loved that. Maria almost seems like a dancer to me. I am a dancer, and so like when she, you know, her reaction to him, how she comes toward him, and she, you know, and then like when he says, "Will you wait for me?" and she's, you know, she's so like stage actor. She's so full. She's like Sam. She's a full body actor.
Yes, that's true.
But I like the line with Under the Tree when Claire was like, "If you're going to take one, take them both."
Yeah.
Talking about the rings. That to me, it rang true. It rang very true. Like, oh, you're going to pay for this. And I was just like, if I were Jamie, that would have given me pause. Serious pause. that whole scene, actually, I like all the lines in that scene, because it was just very much of him begging her to trust him, and her saying, you know what, you know, dude, you just have no idea what you're getting yourself into. And it did bother me, though, that did play out in continuation with the lines in the stable, because it just seemed like that would have been a good continuation of that. It just seemed the lines in the stable didn't seem to flow well from what happened before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that scene had substance. She was really emoting, you know, and I'm probably projecting, but what I read into it is her saying, like, you can't know what this means to me if you're asking me to give you this ring. And the fact that you're asking me to give you this ring hurts me so much, because it tells me that you can't know what it means to me.
So I'm just going to have sex with you and you come in drunk and telling me I'm the reason you're behaving this way is because I'm a woman. Right.
Yeah.
That would have been a no sex month at least.
You know, they didn't give enough time to that.
Yeah.
No.
Is what I think.
That's what I think
to develop and I'm trying to remember what the script said. There was more dialogue in it, as I said before, but I can't remember all of it. But I think had they given more time to it, it might have not felt so stilted and odd.
Yeah.
And I felt like there was a lack of sensitivity in that scene that's why I keep pointing to the director, because the lighting, they just seemed uncomfortable.
The ambiance was not right for what was going on.
Yeah, they seemed uncomfortable to me.
Well, you know,
and especially after the last few episodes where the lighting was just beautiful. I mean, it's like every single scene looked like a painting. And then,
so, you know, they didn't use the time well. The scene between Myrta and Jocasta was beautiful, but it went on too long. We really didn't need the scene
for me
with the governor's wife and that whole chitter chatter. That we could have done without, because we didn't need the scene with Tryon in the tent. All of that could have been accomplished right there when all the men were there talking.
Yeah.
So much time was devoted to stuff that didn't matter, and then the things that they should have let breathe were just so truncated.
Yeah, I agree with you on the cut out the Tryon. I thought they should have ended on the bonnet scene again. The bonnet Forbes scene. They went back to and I thought that was anticlimactic.
Yeah.
But I agree that they could have edited a bunch of that stuff out and had more Jamie and Claire, you know, more, I don't know, breathing.
One of the things that I really liked about that bonnet and Forbes scene, though, was that it was the beginning of the military tattoo that Bear created for this, for the ending. And it was that thrumming and that snare drum, you know, that you hear in a military tattoo. And I thought, oh boy, I think that this next episode, we're going to see some action relative to the military. Yeah, relative to
the preview showed Bree making a comment about that, about this battle being in the history books.
Yes,
as being the start, thought to be start of the
Revolutionary
War.
Big themes, Carmen. Antoinette.
I suppose the big theme was sort of consequences and legacy, because Hector Cameron made a decision that shaped Jocasta's decision to reject Myrta. You know, so it happened a long time ago, but the consequences of that left a legacy that made Jocasta make that choice. And the same thing I felt with sort of the Jamie and Claire arc, where Wiley was asking about the rings, and the legacy of her marriage to Frank still has a big hold on Claire, for her to react so strongly to Jamie asking for that ring. It might have been a lifetime ago, but her choice to stay with Jamie and forsake that, obviously there's still a legacy of that choice that she made, which is still influencing things that she's going through, you know, in this present time. That's the theme that I took away.
I have a theme that I think is may feel obscure to some of you, I don't know, but to me it felt right. At one point when Jocasta and Myrta are together, he says, "And what sort of man is that?" She says, "I ken what kind of man you are." And he said, "What sort of man is that?" And she said, "A sort of man who will lose everything for what he believes in." And what I saw when I looked at this episode was a juxtaposition and contrast and comparing between Jamie and Murtaugh. Because Murtaugh is a man who will sacrifice everything for whatever principle that he has obliged himself to. And Jamie will sacrifice everything for his family. And that's what I think Jocasta was actually looking for. And that's why she said, "I'm going to go with a man who I know that will, you know, take care of me for the rest of my life. I've aged, if you haven't noticed." She says to Murtaugh, "I'm not the young woman I used to be. I've grown old in the intervening years." And she wants someone who will be with her, a companion to her, and stay with her. Is he going to be the kind of man Murtaugh? No, he's not. But that's the kind of man that Jamie is. Jamie is committed to his family. And that's what I saw between those two men. And, you know, you see those kinds of men all the time. I see those kinds of men all the time, men who are committed to whatever cause, money, fortune, you know, fame, whatever it is. And then there are those that are committed to the people that they love.
Interesting. I didn't look at it that way. That's a very interesting view, Carmen. I like that. And you know, when you speak about Jamie will sacrifice everything for the people you love, it takes me back to that what he said to Claire in the wedding scene. You have the protection of my body, my clan, and if necessary, my body as well. He would sacrifice anything for the people he loved, including himself.
Yes. And he has.
Yes.
Over and over again in various ways.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
I actually was thinking along very similar lines, Carmen, as you. That's not obscure. No, that's not obscure to me at all. And the tragedy of Jocasta, because she clearly is in love with Murtaugh. Yeah. She has as Catherine would say, a hormonal response to him. And she doesn't to Innes, but she doesn't believe she can have both because she's been so wounded by this type of man. And I don't believe that Murtaugh would put her first. I think she's
No, I don't think so either. She knows it too.
I think she's correct. And so then Claire has that in Jamie because his cause that he believes in is his family above all else. And I think Roger is shaping up to be that man as well.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. What I find interesting is, and you know, Murtaugh's not, Hector's not, you know, Duncan Innes is not in. I think it's better to marry and burn if possible. That's what I think the big theme is.
Oh, good. Yeah, well said. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I think is, where do we put Frank? That's what I was just thinking about while you were talking, is where do we put Frank? Because he was in the show and in the book, he was pretty dedicated to Claire.
And he burned.
He just fell out of love with him.
Well,
yeah.
I don't think he fell out of love with him. She just fell more in love with Jamie.
Well, yes, but I think Frank would have been do you guys think he would have remained faithful to her if the Jamie thing hadn't happened?
Oh yeah.
They had stayed
I don't.
together? You
I
don't.
think so.
Mm-mm.
I don't think so. I think if Claire
No.
would have gone on to be a surgeon
Yeah.
and become the career woman that she did, because remember in season 3, one of his complaints was that she was never there.
Yeah.
So he is the Frank that I saw in the series was one who wanted to be in control. He wanted to be, the center of Claire's life, and that was never.
That's true.
Mhm.
Well,
But I don't think she would have become a surgeon had she not come back in time.
Well,
Oh, I don't know. I think she would have wanted a career though.
yeah.
She would have wanted a career, but I don't think I wonder.
Perhaps
wouldn't-
not
I don't
surgery.
know if
I
she
don't
would
know.
have.
I don't
He
know
wouldn't have
though.
supported her the way that Jamie did.
No, he wouldn't.
No.
And
And
it is true that he had them going on a honeymoon that was a historical research project.
not only that, but if I saw what his problem was in chapter 1 of Outlander, the
Yeah.
very first chapter, because he was very worried about her potty mouth because she swore in front of somebody. She said Jesus H. Roosevelt Christ or something like that, and a damn it or something like that when she picked up a hot tea kettle. And she swore, and he was very embarrassed about that. He didn't want her. He wanted her to be a nice professor's wife, and to be a model citizen. That's how I see it. I don't think he wanted her to be who she was.
Yeah.
He didn't want the real Claire. He didn't
Right.
want to accept the real Claire. Whereas Jamie wants the real Claire.
Yes.
Frank wanted his version of Claire, but Jamie accepts and wants and loves the real
I think
Claire.
My overall theme is that a woman is only as strong as the man she's with. And so,
Yeah.
You ladies are deep. I love it.
I think
but
that's
I mean,
true.
that's pretty much because, especially in that time when, women were also second-class citizens, and so their worth was based on the men they were with, and so how much they could do, how much they could get away with, how much they could accomplish. That's even true somewhat today.
It is.
But so I mean, you can tell a lot of the man she's with by how much she's accomplished, and I think that to me would seem to be the overall theme of this episode.
Good.
Wow.
And I think the reverse is true too about a man.
Meaning?
And state it for us.
That
Please.
I can't remember how Catherine said it, but a man is only
As strong.
as strong as the woman he's with.
Or as accomplished as a man she's with.
Yeah, a man is usually only as accomplished as the woman he's with. I think that's true. We can say patriarchy and all that stuff, but there's usually a great partner behind
any successful person.
Yeah.
Man or woman.
Well, that is a truism that's often repeated, so I think there's a lot of truth in that. There's a lot of guys that look really important out in the public domain that
I know great shakes as people. Their husbands.
Right. As husbands and that their wives are troubled and, difficult. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of exceptions to that.
There are. But I think in this episode, though, what you see are women who are strong in their own right, but they're either strengthened or weakened by who they're with. And I think Bree's been weakened up, and maybe you'll strengthen over time because Roger seems to be getting, his balls back. And then Jamie, I think Claire was weakened while Jamie was weak, and now he's getting his balls back, so now she's stronger. And I think Jocasta's strong, and she's weakened herself by marrying Ennis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and maybe the production will figure that out.
They may. It's possible.
So that we can have, instead of taking turns or competing, that it's actually two
Partners.
strong individuals strengthen each other.
Well, we see that from time to time.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. I mean, the Beardsley episode was a perfect example to me of two equal partners working together, you know, to solve a horrible problem and to take care of a child with no, you know, who's basically been abandoned, and find out what to do about it. I mean, I just thought that was, both Jamie and Claire contributed their skills to that situation to bring about a resolution that was workable.
They were trying to do that a little bit in this episode, but it just failed, because we started off with Jamie and Claire talking on that patio thing, with her sort of giving him perspective because he was angry that Myrtle wasn't there, and she's saying, listen, that's Myrtle's choice. And then they're, you know, scheming and trying to figure out this whole bonnet situation. It's just that they botched it.
Yeah, I think it wasn't a complete fail personally, but I think that it was a lesser, well done job than something like Beardsley's.
Yeah.
I like Courtney's corollary.
What?
I've named it Courtney's corollary.
What's that?
You have a new rider, you always pair it with a seasoned one.
What?
You've said that before, don't you remember? It works best if you have a new rider and you pair them with a seasoned rider. I'm calling that Courtney's corollary.
Got it. Okay. I thought that was an anatomical term.
Aren't there some arteries? Aren't there some arteries? The corollary arteries?
Yeah.
Yes, there are.
There are. That's why I was like, am I showing my corollary? Standouts before we go. For you in this episode, standouts.
I mean, acting wise, Maria Dell Kennedy and Duncan LaCroix, you know, they just broke me into pieces in that scene. So their acting stood out tremendously for me. From the very first scene with the daughter and her reaction, Maria was just like, she was on another level in this entire episode. It was an acting masterclass. And Duncan held his own and matched her in that scene. So that was just wonderful to see.
Carmen?
I would agree. I would also, though, give some kudos to the gentleman who played Philip Wiley. I actually thought yes, he was foolish, but he thought he was at the height of fashion. They said he'd just come back from spending time in France, and I think he just thought that he was going to blow everybody's socks off, and instead he looked like a fool. But I thought he played you know, a fop very well. And he was as disgusting as he was supposed to be. And I did look at his vest to see if there were lions and unicorns on it, by the way, which he did wear at her wedding, but they weren't. They were flowers, but he did wear a very fancy vest.
Yeah. Well, my standouts were Maria Doyle Kennedy. I just thought she was amazing. Duncan LaCroix, and Chris Donald is the guy who plays Philip Wiley, and he was also a standout for me.
Yeah. Standouts for me, again, the same, Maria Doyle Kennedy. That whole scene between Duncan and Maria was fantastic. The other was Colin. I thought that he did a really good job in this as well. I think the costumes and the sets really stood out most for me.
Did we leave anything out?
I don't
think so.
If we did,
I think we dissected it very well.
We dissected it.
Oh, you bad girl.
We dissected, we bisected.
We dissected and we bisected and we did all that.
All right, we got to go.
Yes,
okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Love
You
y'all.
all.
y'all.
Later.
Stay
Take
safe.
care.
Stay well. All
Bye.
of your families too.
Hold on
Stay
the
well.
All right. Bye. Go drink your
Bye.
wine,
Love
Antoinette.
you.
Get you snitch.
Bye.